Are you ready to take your business to the next level? Every day there are countless books and articles that are published offering the key on how to make your business a success. It's easy to feel overwhelmed trying to keep up and run your business. That's why Deb Creer created the Business Power Hour. Keep up on the latest trends, best practices, and techniques for how to make your business a success. Let the Business Power Hour do the heavy work for you.
Good morning. Good morning. I am Deb Creer, and I am passionate about working with professionals and giving them the tools to make themselves and their businesses as successful as possible. And we're going to have such a fun discussion today. I love speaking with young women, because you are a lot younger than me, who have done such wonderful things with their careers and really made a path not only for themselves, but for others, and especially women. We are going to be talking to the women in our audience, but gentlemen, don't turn it off, because y'all have really wonderful women in your lives who you might need to tell this information to. So please join me in welcoming Sara McElroy to our program today. Welcome, Sara. How are you?
I'm great, Deb. So good to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
Great. I love it. Well, let me tell people a little bit about you, and then we'll jump in. So Sara McElroy is an ex-chief marketing officer and former corporate good girl who reinvented her career and reimagined the way she worked after unexpectedly becoming the Wall Street Journal's poster girl for pandemic burnout. Now she's a career transition expert, soon to be author, and speaker on a mission to help brilliant professional women unapologetically do the same. She just landed her first book deal for Women Who Walk, which will be a self-help guide that gives women the confidence and blueprint to leave their job that no longer serves them and land the one that will, or create it. And it will be published by Post Hill Press in the fall of 2024. So again, Sara, welcome.
Thank you, Deb. And I love that little ad lib on the end there. Yes, it is 100% about just wiping the slate clean and saying, if the way I want to work in the job I want to do is not here in front of me right now, I can go get a new one, or I can create one.
I can make my own. Right.
Leave it. Yes.
Right. Well, and we're going to have a great discussion, basically because I left corporate America over 20 years ago. And so it's going to be fun to discuss how much things changed over these 20 years, or have they stayed the same?
Sure.
But, I always like finding out, and we got a little taste of it when I read your bio. How is it that you got to where you are today and discovered that this right now is your passion in life?
Yes, I love that question. It has been a circuitous journey for sure, and one that was very unexpected. I was the corporate good girl, as you mentioned in the bio, and it's actually a title that I embrace now because I want others to see that it's something that is very insidiousness. It really filters through the undercurrents of corporate America, this good girl conditioning that we oftentimes as women really experience as kids and in classrooms, this expectation of being, the one who takes care of others' needs, who follows the rules, who listens to the teacher, who gets the questions right according to what the authority figure says is the right answer. Like all of those little elements of conditioning, we grow up with that and then end up bringing it into corporate America in very unconscious ways. So that was me for a very long time. And I wore my ability to outwork anybody and to be that corporate yes woman as a badge of honor. It was something I was so proud of. And on the other side of a really painful divorce and some really difficult personal stuff that happened in 2014, I even got fired from a job during that time as my life was just a mess. It was like, I know that the one life raft I have right now is to throw myself into my career, personal stuff, just throw it all aside, focus on that because it's the one thing that I'd always been good at. I was high school valedictorian. Like I could always know if you give me the
You
playbook
were the
and tell
good
me
girl.
that's I will be the good girl and I will do it. Exactly. And so that's what I did. And by the time I was 35, it was 2020. The pandemic was just starting. I was working with an executive recruitment firm who had reached out about becoming a chief marketing officer for this private equity backed wellness concept that was going to be scaling nationally. So this huge opportunity from a career standpoint, I was ecstatic. You know, that's what every corporate good girl who wants to climb.
You move up that ladder.
Exactly. And so I get there and between trying to prove myself, I was the youngest member of the executive team. Between that and I was also working on an executive MBA program at Georgia Tech at the time. I started working up to 20 hours a day. Now that wasn't every single day, but it was a lot of really unsustainable juggling of all the balls, thinking like, okay, I just have to hold it together until I graduate in a few months. But during that time, that's when my body started to rebel. And I had a couple of episodes of throwing up blood that landed me in the emergency room. And finally had a shingles diagnosis in April 2021. And that was really my wake up call moment that you hear a lot of people talking about these days, these like crystallizing moments of, oh my gosh, I may have not had this as figured out as I thought I did, because I'm sitting in the doctor's office and the doctor tells me, you know, Sarah, you have shingles. And I have this wave of relief that just pours over me because the doctor is giving me 8 days off from work and there's nobody who can possibly
because you are contagious.
Question it, anything. I couldn't let myself off the hook and raise my hand and say, I'm floundering. I am absolutely drowning right now. And so it was a reason to be able to do that. And so I'm so proud of that version of me on the other side, because after I'm leaving the doctor's office and feeling like that, I'm like, Sarah, this isn't a normal response to being told.
Most people go, shingles suck.
An illness. Exactly. Well, like on the worst case, I was very, very fortunate, and I had some of that neuralgia pain that stuck around for a good maybe 7 or 8 months after my shingles. But there are a lot of people that can end up with really adverse, consequences, like paralysis and blindness and stuff. The fact that I am feeling relief and even celebrating this bodily breakdown was very much that turning point moment of, okay, Sarah, like stop, we're going to hit the life reset button. So what I did is I quit that job even before I came back from my shingles sabbatical. I got a new job in Florida. I moved down, found a tiny little place on the water because I'm thinking I'm going to totally changed my life. I'm going to focus on my personal well-being and happiness. I'm hitting the yoga mat more than I ever have. I'm cutting back on my work hours. I'm keeping better boundaries. And for a little while, I started feeling better. And during this time, this is actually when the Wall Street Journal picked up my story. They found me on LinkedIn, and I was part of this article where they did this deep dive into pandemic career burnout, and ended up doing a podcast for them. And I finished up that podcast episode, that interview with the host, Kate Linebaugh. And you listen to that episode and it sounds like, oh, Sarah found her peace in the slower pace of life on the water. In many ways, that is absolutely true. But what was happening behind the scenes is that I always had this perspective of burnout that was the overworking piece of things. Like you're just pushing your body to the brink of your capacity. But I didn't really understand that there was so much more to burnout. And it is far more about also suppressing your voice and ignoring your needs and continuing to show up, doing something day after day that your body is telling you, like, this isn't it for me anymore. And that's what I was having even in the new job. I was dealing with a sexual harassment situation that wasn't properly addressed for months. So to your point of like leaving corporate America 20 years ago and wondering if it's the same or different, many organizations have changed. This one was still really steeped in that old legacy, good old boy culture. And so I ended up leaving that organization and being really inspired to reach out to other women because I leave the CMO job May 2021. I leave this job in January 2022. In 9 months, corporate good girl Sara has quit 2 perfect on paper executive level roles. And I have no idea like who I am and what is happening. Like, this is so bananas. I never would have done that before, but I just got to this point where it was like, I can't keep doing this.
Right.
And that inspired me to talk to other women because I'm like, I can't be the only person who is experiencing this and getting mired in these spin cycles of burnout or moving from one bad culture to another, like a bad boyfriend. Like, and that's what really sparked this interest in hearing other women's stories.
I love it. You know, and when we talk about burnout, I mean, we're not just saying, I don't like my job. I didn't like what I had to do today. I mean, it is this persistent, oh my God, type of thing. And, and like I said, I left corporate America over 20 years ago, and there were, several reasons for it. But mine wasn't burnout, which was good. But there were, a lot of the Sunday night, I have to go to work tomorrow.
Totally.
And we all have that on occasion, right? Because it's like, oh, there's a big project I have to do, or I don't want to have to drive, or whatever it is. But burnout is when it's that persistent, oh my God. And exactly what happened to you is what typically happens is your body says, nope, we're not doing this anymore.
Right. Absolutely. Well, and you make a great point because the whole thing, even though I start this conversation, we started out this conversation in a very idealistic way of like, I truly believe at my core, it is possible for us to find work that we love, whether or not it's a job that's within our organization or we created ourselves. Like, I don't believe like in this world that we're in today with as diverse and as many people there are and as many different needs there are out there, like I think we can all find a place. Right. But I understand that sounds idealistic, and it's not that I don't believe that we don't have challenges or that work doesn't, push us to our growth edges and give us friction to help us learn and grow. Like all of that is so important to not only us being able to have the kind of impact we want to have on the world, but also for our own personal trajectory and our personal journey and becoming the best possible human that we can be in this lifetime and getting the most out of our time here. It's not to say that we won't have challenges and won't have those Sunday scary feelings, but when it is, to your point, it's persistent and it's eroding of your personal confidence, your vitality, your happiness week after week. That's when it just, it's telling you that there's something wrong. Your body, this nudge you're feeling that's saying, I don't want to go to work tomorrow, is telling you there's something wrong for a reason and you should ignore it.
Well, and the important thing to note is there's not something wrong with you. Absolutely. There's something wrong with the situation. And I think that's where so many people get caught up is, men or women, we think we have to do this. And when we don't want it, what is wrong with us? Well, it's not us. It is the situation. It's everything else that goes with it. But it did make me wonder, you mentioned you were a good girl way back, from, and so after you quit your second job in, 9 months, what did family and friends say? I'm sure they were concerned about you, but were they, well, when are you going to get another job? What are you going to do? Sara, what are you going to do? What do you mean you don't want to get a job? How did you deal with the in lack of a better word, just peer pressure?
Well, Deb, great question. Within I guess it was about a month of leaving, I had just been feeling this nudge to write a book, and I didn't know exactly what it was, but once I started sharing my story publicly, both the Wall Street Journal and then sharing a little bit more on LinkedIn, I had people reaching out, and it was, really amazing to see very public support. But what was far more powerful were the personal DMs of people sharing their struggles and, experiencing either very similar things or not even knowing what to do or where to go, and just like, thank you for sharing this because I know I'm not alone. I realized there was so much magic and power in that, and that there was a conversation to be had here that was bigger. And so I had been feeling that nudge to a book. I thought, well, I'll just start by talking to women and understanding what they might be experiencing right now. Actually, the moment that the spark of inspiration hit me, I was at a musical down here. It's a musical called Respect, a musical journey of women. It's actually based on a book that was written by a professor out of Tennessee who studied all of the number one hits from 1900 forward, written by women. And as she dug into the music and started analyzing the trends, what she saw is that the music and the songs that were hitting number one were telling the story of women from the time that they were in. And so you see, like, from the beginning of the musical, it starts out with, like, one of the songs is like all about, oh, my man, what will I do without my man? Like, starting out in that sort of more meek, submissive role that women were expected to play toward the early 1900s. And then you get toward the end of the musical, and it's like Girl on Fire by Alicia Keys and Brave by Sarah Bareilles. And it's like these really powerful songs. And so it just hit me as I'm sitting there and I'm hearing the song Brave by Sarah Bareilles play at the end. And it's all about speaking your truth. I was like, I'm going to talk to other women. There's something here. And so because I had at least that was enough for people to, like, get off my case and sort of let me do my thing. Because most people who know me know that when I get something stuck in my craw, I'm going to take it to the end. And so it was enough for them to at least let me go on that journey. But I know that people have wondered what I'm doing, and have thought probably even that it's a little bit of a crazy thing, because what I ended up doing is I founded Raise to Rise, which is a project amplifying the powerful voices and stories of women from the Great Resignation. And that's a little bit of a career suicide, at least corporate career suicide type of move, to say, like, I want to stand behind these women who are making this choice to walk away, because I believe that we are at the forefront of a movement in which women are carving out an equal place in the working world that was never designed for them. If we look back, you know, I'm sure, like, you can appreciate this from your time being in corporate America. The working environment was designed by men for men, them to be successful. And so that's why.
And it was okay for them to be workaholics. It wasn't healthy for them, but you know, that was how it was designed.
Yeah, exactly. And they weren't worrying about coming home and taking care of the house and kids and things like that. And so there's this moment of reckoning and balancing of the scales that is happening here. And we're feeling it on a macro level, like societally. The Great Resignation is a perfect example of that. Women were leading the Great Resignation. And a study by Deloitte last year found that more than 50% of women intended to quit their jobs in just the next 2 years. And that number skyrocketed to 90% on a 5-year horizon. So only 10% of women intending to be with their current employer 5 years from now, which is, like, totally wild. Those are red alarm numbers. But even as we're seeing that, like, on a macro level, more important than any of that to me is the individual story. Every single data point in that is a story of a person who has, you know, a life and a family and a dream and you know, all these things that they need to do, and making that decision to walk away, to, you know, carve out their own new path at work, whatever that looks like. That is a really important, pivotal moment in their life. It's a very personal decision that's immensely nuanced. And that's, like, what I wanted to dig into, the juiciness of all of that.
Right. You know, and it's interesting. Like I said, I quit, you know, I think my last day in corporate America was January 1st. There's a very weird reason for that. 2002. So yeah, it's been quite a long time. And actually the short version is the company I was with kept me on for that one day in January so that I could get additional benefits. Which I thought was very nice of them, because those benefits were lots and lots of money. You know, and most people would have, you know, December 31st. I mean, that's just what makes sense. But no, they kept me on that one extra day. But I still, to this day, have people say, well, when are you going to get a real job?
Oh my
And,
goodness.
and now I am extremely fortunate that my husband has a very good job, and and with very good benefits, all of those other things. And so it's not, I haven't had the pressure of I have to work because I need the insurance or that extra paycheck or any of those things. And my business makes money. Does it make as much as I could be making in corporate America? Probably not. But it's really funny because I still do get that. When are you going to go back? When are you going to go back? Well, I'm not going back. And I know there's so many people that deal with that. Plus, they also, I'm sure, deal with the fact that, back to that peer pressure thing, women have had to work so hard to get to senior level type of positions. And then to say, I'm not going to do that. We are
Yes.
not, ladies, pay attention to this. We are not letting the female race down when we say we're not going to do that anymore. In
Right.
fact, it's a positive.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, I totally agree. I had this amazing conversation toward the beginning of starting the Race to Rise project where I interviewed a woman who has now become this career
Mm-hmm.
pivoter and this like multi-passionate type of
Mm-hmm.
person is how she defines herself, but she was a lawyer. She
Mm-hmm.
started out as a lawyer and
Right.
she's sitting, at these tables with
Mm-hmm.
these people, and she was a daughter of Chinese immigrants. So
Mm-hmm.
like her parents were so proud. They had never gone to
Mm-hmm.
college. She went to college and she
Right.
got her law degree. She's
Mm-hmm.
sitting at the tables that not only she has always wanted
Mm-hmm.
to sit at, and her family has always
Mm-hmm.
wanted her to sit at. And she's like, this is not for me.
Mm-hmm.
And so actually she left law many years ago
Mm-hmm.
and she's built this sort of like trust muscle of trusting herself and taking these
Mm-hmm.
leaps. And so her great resignation was much more of leaving a tech job that she had
Mm-hmm.
actually ended up in. But you make a great point that there's this stickiness that
Mm-hmm.
comes with moving up the ladder and
Mm-hmm.
knowing not only how hard you've worked to
Mm-hmm.
get there, but the fact that you are also paving the way for
Right. You're
others.
a
There's a
role
pressure.
model. Mm-hmm.
There's a
Mm-hmm.
pressure and a weight on
Mm-hmm.
shoulders. And what I've come to find is that as much as I agree that there is this pipeline problem in
Mm-hmm.
America, and we can certainly talk about that too, I can share it for the show notes. The
Mm-hmm.
Women in the Workplace report from McKinsey came out last October and found
Mm-hmm.
that for every two women that are being promoted in corporate America,
Mm-hmm.
from a manager
Mm-hmm.
level role up into director
Mm-hmm.
level or above, for every two women that are being, or excuse me, it's the other way around. It's every one woman being promoted, there are two walking out the door. So there's a
Right.
bleeding
Mm-hmm.
that is happening
Mm-hmm.
as far as like we're losing women at the
Mm-hmm.
top. And it's not to say that we shouldn't fight for that and we shouldn't try to change
Mm-hmm.
the systems. I 1,000%
Mm-hmm.
believe in that. But first and foremost, I believe that the health of the individual, like if
Mm-hmm.
you are miserable and you're
Right.
burning out and you're
Mm-hmm.
not in the right place for you, we need you
Mm-hmm.
healthy
Mm-hmm.
to fight
Right. Mm-hmm.
sort of good
Your
fight, right?
family
Like,
needs you healthy. Everybody needs
yeah,
you healthy. Mm-hmm.
everybody, nobody wants you. We're not doing our anybody any good.
Mm-hmm.
And most importantly, ourselves first
Right.
and foremost, but
Mm-hmm.
everybody else and the ripple effect that emanates from that, we are not doing anybody
Mm-hmm.
any good staying somewhere that's no longer a fit for
Right.
us.
Right. And
Yeah.
to that end is the flip side. Employers need to be doing a better job of making sure that they have a workplace that people want to keep coming back to.
Absolutely.
When Elon Musk bought Twitter, they made this whole
My
big
goodness.
deal out of he was making people sleep in the
I
office.
know.
And I'm thinking
Wacky.
that is not a good thing, people, for anybody.
Yeah.
You should never now, you've lived in Atlanta. Every once in a while, it does this funny thing here called snow. And so sometimes you might have to sleep in your office. That's a very different situation. When your
Right.
employer is saying and expecting you, or you're going to lose your job, to live in the office. Okay, first of all, I would have said bye. I mean, I don't understand anybody who stayed. I mean, that just, and I've not really read too much, so I don't know why they chose to stay. But yeah, I mean, that is not healthy. And And so even if you're an employer who's, just kind of looking around going, and we see this a lot with financial, legal firms, things like that, where sometimes people are in the office for 20 hours a day. Okay, what are you doing that is making your employees do that? Do you not have enough staff? I mean, all of these various things. And so it's on the employer to look at that and go, you know what? Sarah needs to go home. And more importantly, Sarah doesn't need to go home and continue working another 5 or 6 hours. Because I think that was also one of the big things was people went, okay, sure, you're only going to be in the office 8 hours, but we're going to expect another 4 or 5 out of you once you get home. No, no.
Absolutely. It's a funny thing how this shift, which really economists are saying is now created a true structural shift in the workforce, and not just this episodic blip of the Great Resignation and this sort of this whiplash effect of the post-pandemic. The woman from McKinsey who did this big report, I guess this was July of last year, that found that anywhere between, I think, 40 to 70% of people were thinking about quitting their jobs. Like she's saying the workforce will never go back to the way that it was in 2019. Like the blinders are off, right?
Yeah. I still have people that say, I can't wait for it to go back to normal. No, this is our normal now, and it's funny. I tell people it's called normal. It's your new normal. We're not. And really, do we want to go back to the way it was in January of 2020? No.
Right, exactly. And then it becomes this opportunity to look at what's happening and use it as a mirror and say, where can we as employers do a better job here? And I'll say too, to not completely put it on them, that even one of my biggest learnings coming out of this time since leaving corporate is that I have a role in that burnout that I was playing as well. And I had to own my own part of that. Like
you chose to be doing that.
Exactly. And it was because I had no idea that I still had so much of my identity and worth wrapped up in what I could produce from a work perspective, that it's even been this unraveling of those old knots, this unlearning. And I'm part of the problem too, of being that woman with no boundaries, being the good girl, etc. So it's just such a fascinating time that we're in right now, where we are all saying the way we work has not been working for the bulk of us. So what are we all going to do to build a better way forward?
Yeah. And it's so true. We get so caught up in that identity. What is our title? All of those various things. And we also think we worked darn hard to get there. Whether, and went through a lot. Education might be that, we the long hours, all of those things. And so we do think, I can't give that up. I must be an absolute idiot to want to give that up. But again, for our mental and physical health, we absolutely have to think, what is going to benefit us? And there are those people who, they thrive on working those long hours. I mean, I always am perplexed when, you see the thing that says, so-and-so thrives on only 3 hours of sleep a night. I just always think that's going to catch them. The human body is not designed to do that.
Exactly.
So what they're doing is they're living on adrenaline and caffeine, probably, right? At some point, their body is going to say, no, you cannot do this. So that is one of the things is we work so hard to get there. How on earth could we want to give it up? And again, what's wrong with us for wanting to do that?
Right. Well, and if that's what we've been shown as the path to success,
right.
And there are, I think about the people that I saw in my life modeling how to approach your careers. I'm the daughter of a banker. So fiscal responsibility is it runs through my
Right.
blood.
Yes.
And, you know, not making like very irrational or irresponsible decisions is very much something that I'm always thinking about. But part of that too is that I know that my dad was not happy in certain jobs and stayed longer in them than he really truly wanted to. And it was even impacting his health to an extent. And it was because it was just like, that's just what you do. You take that dissatisfaction, you shove it down somewhere where the sun won't see it, and you just move on with your life. And that's what we taught. And if the outside, right? Like if the outside looks good and your insides are kind of wonky about it, there was nobody that told me like, Sara, it's good to make sure that like your insides match your outsides. And so on the outside, right? Perfect resume, C-level by 35 inside shell of a human. I didn't necessarily know how to recognize or either recognize or rectify that discrepancy between the two.
Right. You know, and it is such a challenge to say, I'm going to go off on my own. You know, and it's scary. I mean, I remember when I decided, you know, 22-ish years ago that I was going to leave corporate America. It was really funny because I loved where I worked and I liked what I did. I loved the people I worked with, but I could see a different path for me. You know, but for me, going and telling the people that I was leaving, that was one of the hardest things to do, because like I said, I liked it. I felt like I was letting them down. You know, and I put it off for months. And so I did both. I worked there and I started my own company. And so then of course, you know, that was, you know, a lot of working hours, which I shouldn't have been doing. But I think that's the other thing is we have to go with where our heart is telling us to go. And, you know, it was funny because the people I worked with for the most part understood it. One was angry. I mean, he was like, no, you know, we have done such great things for you. And I said, thank you so much. But now it's time for me to do great things for me. And he went, you know, and I said, okay, you know, fine. I don't have to deal with him anymore. But yeah, it's such a, you know, to be that brave. And it's funny, you mentioned something a little bit ago, that trust muscle. We have to flex that trust muscle and know that we can do it.
Yes, I completely agree. The trust muscle piece too is fundamentally a function of it's both, right? It's self-trust and it's trust that there's going to be something on the other side, that if something is nudging you, saying, Deb, you are, even as you're enjoying this, there's something else here for you. And that if you follow that there's a reason that you're meant to follow that. And there will be something there for you. And then trust yourself that you know that that's a nudge. That's not just a, you know, a crazy chaotic whim that you're being indulgent or irresponsible chasing, but that like, that is you. That is like a deeper part of Deb, wiser, knows what's best for you, and you can trust and lean on that. So that's what we build that trust with ourselves. So we know that when we're hearing something that is telling us to do, you know, something that's different than what we're doing now, especially those really scary, kind of crazy things. And that when we take baby steps in the direction of that nudge, that dream, that there will be something there to meet us. And that's been a really big thing for me from this journey too, is that pre all of this, or really pre 2021, I would say, I was logical, rational, pragmatic. Like, what do we worship in corporate America? Your intellect. That is what we, you know, we build on. And there's nothing wrong with that. It doesn't mean that I don't still love data and science and all of those things that come into play. But what has come out of this is this much deeper belief in our softer strengths, like our intuition, our faith, our trust, things like that like Brene Brown talks about in her work, that when she first started doing the gifts of imperfection and found that faith and trust were important parts of wholehearted living, which she says is like living an authentic life, or like living your life to the fullest extent. And that means even authentically choosing your career and showing up at work. And she found that faith and trust were really important in that. And so she cringed. She was like, this is like an attack on my good friend's logic and rationality.
Right.
And then she started to realize, like, no, it all coexists so beautifully. And we have just forgotten that there is this entire part of us that is part of our intelligence that is not just cognition, it's our intuition, it's body intelligence, it's so much else at play that we can tap into to create the full strength of our capabilities in the world, rather than just relying on our minds, because our minds are where fear comes from. Fear is to keep us safe and in homeostasis and away from, predators jump out. It's
it protects us.
Wired, of course, but it will not, in our day and age. Me taking the leap to start my own company is not the same as Sara stepping out in front of a tiger. And my body, my nervous system may not know that, but I have to figure out how to work my way through that and trust those nudges to move forward.
Right.
And that makes it so much stronger than just Sara, the rational brain.
Right. You know, and we've been, I told you, sometimes I go, squirrel, here's a squirrel. So we've been talking about, taking the leap and starting our own companies. But you also work with women who take the leap and stay in corporate America. They just totally or somewhat change career paths. And it's interesting because I work with people on their LinkedIn profiles, and I get that question on occasion. It's, well, this is what my education is. This is what I've always done, but I want to do this. And quite often it's very different. And so what they tell me is, how on earth do I put that in, say, my LinkedIn profile? And I tell them, well, you got to, you didn't just all of a sudden go, poof, I'm this new person.
Right.
But how do you work with people when they say, okay, I've always been in finance, but I want to run a nursery, I want to be an employee at, so how do you work with them to show them how they can make that transition?
Yes. Well, great question. What I will say first and foremost is that when you're making the big shift between not just within the same sort of function or the same industry, the path is likely to be longer. I want to put that out first and foremost, because that's what I'm certainly finding, is that we will want to make that transition and be really excited to become, like, for example, I was working with a woman on her LinkedIn profile, to your point. She was moving from, I believe it was like some type of customer success, and she wanted to be a project manager. So not huge difference. Like, that's a pretty reasonable gap to bridge. But what we talked about are like baby steps in working in that direction. So it is very much you're finding all of those transferable skills and experiences from those previous roles that you've had, and you're figuring out the way to weave it into a narrative arc of your career that makes really good sense and fits where you want to go. And then you're also taking baby steps in the direction of becoming that next thing. It is not, so that's the misconception of the big leap. And I love talking about leaps, because I think leaps are actually more energetic in nature, of just saying, like, I am going to do the thing to the point of the fear. So this is a perfect segue that you took with your squirrel. I'm going to take that fear, turn it into fuel, and make a leap as far as like the commitment I'm making to head in that direction. But it can be baby steps along the way. It can be gentle. It's actually better on our nervous system. It's easier to make a change when we're taking baby steps. And so that might be, you start talking to people in the industry where you want to go. You find a mentor, you take a class, you do volunteer work, like you get creative in the ways that you can start getting your hands and getting involved. And then you're also responding to the feedback you're getting from yourself in making this move too. And it's in even like your body and your emotions. That's what I think I never learned, that I have very much enjoyed learning from this experience, in ignoring my body so much that I could work myself to the point of shingles. What came out of this detoxing period is really understanding that my body was telling me all along, not just that I was overworking, but like, oh, that tensing in my stomach, that clenching in my
Mm-hmm.
jaw,
Right.
that constricted feeling in my
Mm-hmm.
chest when I was asked to do this thing,
Mm-hmm.
or I was in a meeting with this person, or, I was in this toxic environment. Like my body was sending me signals
Mm-hmm.
all along and I never responded to it.
Mm-hmm.
And so what we can do is, as we're starting to take steps in the direction of the new dream,
Mm-hmm.
we're getting that feedback loop from ourselves and figuring out, okay, how does this feel? Ooh, that felt
Mm-hmm.
really good. I loved doing that volunteer project.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I'm going to keep doing more of
Right.
that and see
Mm-hmm.
where it takes me. I just think we have to be open to more of organic unfolding along the way, rather than, I was always the person who's like, I'm going to have the career transition
Mm-hmm.
plan and here's what I'm going to do today and this date and that
Mm-hmm.
date, and I'm going to do XYZ and it's all going to be perfect. And I'm just learning more and more. And in working with more women,
Mm-hmm.
it's just not the way life goes. And it's actually
Right.
a lot less fun that way. When you
Mm-hmm.
let the flow
Mm-hmm.
happen and the magic unfold on its own, not to say that you don't have a plan generally of what
Mm-hmm.
you're going to do. It's just you don't have to be so rigid
Right.
and prescriptive.
Right. And for those type A people that are saying, but it's
I
okay.
know. I'm too. I know. Sarah from like 3 years ago
Mhm.
somewhere is probably like, what is she saying?
Yes.
This
Oh my
sounds
gosh. Oh my
crazy.
gosh. Hmm. Hmm.
And it even Zoom thought I was raising my hand. So
No.
put that
Yeah.
down.
Zoom was like, eek, eek.
I know.
I know. I was like, you raised your hand. But yeah, and she did. She raised her hand. She was like, what the heck are you doing? And
Yep.
it's so interesting because yeah, when we and I think it comes back to that trust muscle, having faith, all of those things. I do believe things happen the way they're supposed to happen. Now, should we
I do.
just willy-nilly go, okay, no. Like you mentioned, okay, get a mentor, take classes, volunteer, because you may also think, well, gee, I want to do this. And then you start, it's like, no, really didn't want to.
Exactly. Exactly. Oh my God. Deb,
Mhm.
honestly, I just realized I was pushed so much to do the book and I'm excited about
Mhm.
my book and thrilled, but I was so laser focused in
Mhm.
my brain that that was the thing for me,
Right.
that I had no idea that there was
Mhm.
so much else that I would want to
Mhm.
do with this work. And we'll close ourselves off
Mhm.
too if we don't actually live and experience the
Mhm.
thing that we want, because it can be
Mhm.
very different in our brain than in our bodies.
Right.
Well, and the last thing I'll toss out there related to this too is that I've been doing some internet research
Mhm.
and other rabbit holes. I'm always fascinated with like how things work in
Mhm.
history and nature and
Mhm.
patterning. And what we find is that in nature and history, periods of order are preceded by chaos. And
Mhm.
it's this pattern and this repeating of order into chaos into order
Mhm.
over and over and over again. It happens in the natural world, like with forest fires, for
Mhm.
example, but it's also like the bubonic plague
Right.
brought about, they believe, people say, I obviously
Mhm.
wasn't there, but they say that that was really the impetus for the Renaissance,
Mhm.
and that there was beauty and creativity and
Right.
innovation
Mhm.
and all of this amazing,
Mhm.
unexpected fruitfulness that
Mhm.
came out of this period of destruction and chaos. And that's
Right.
what I think we have to allow ourselves
Mhm.
space for, which I never did.
Mhm.
And that's why you can't have the perfectly constructed career plan with
Mhm.
the Gantt chart to do the thing and
Mhm.
on the date, and have it all work out necessarily exactly the way you wanted it. Because honestly, when you let go a little bit and surrender
Mhm.
to the fact that maybe there are
Mhm.
bigger things at play than
Mhm.
necessarily just like Sarah's brain, it could be so much better than we ever
Right.
even imagined.
Right. And things happen. I mean, you got shingles,
Totally.
all of these things. What we didn't talk about before the program is back in 2015, I was told, hey, you have cancer. Um, and and I tell people, e- everything that happened, nothing went the way it was supposed to. Many catastrophic things. I mean, all
Yeah,
sorts of things
absolutely.
happen. And but I learned so much through that, and still am learning. That yeah, it's kind of the thing, faith kind of laughs at you, or fate, I'm sorry, laughs at you, when you have these plans. It's like, yeah, let's just kind of throw this monkey wrench in there. But I have also learned that I have to be flexible. And a big part too is also, what is not working, what is toxic. And many of that are the people in our lives.
Sure.
And some of those might be in the workplace, all of those various things. So how do we get, ourselves out of those? And the sad thing is, it takes something like an illness before we
Yeah.
go, wait a minute. And I think that is because, as we've been saying, we have been programmed. This is what you do from when we were little.
Yeah.
I'm at the tail end of baby boomer. And so it was a little bit different for me because it was okay for me to go to college. Um, you know, Even 5, 10 years before, if a woman went to college, it was to get a teaching degree or a nursing degree, and then you became a wife and a mother, and that was it. And you had 4.2 kids, and one was named Beaver, and all of these, and Wally, and all of those things. And I would have liked having an Opie, and Opie would have been good, right? We all like little Ron Howard.
Sure.
Um, but and that was, and then of course when I grew up, it was the Brady Bunch, and and the girls there were still very different than the boys. I mean, the boys were the class leaders, they were the sports people, and let's be honest. I mean, we put a lot of pressure on men to follow these exact same roles, and
We do. We
and
do.
yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah,
We do. Totally.
but yeah, we have been preconditioned to go into this, and then for us to say, nah, it come, but one of the things, and you really researched this when you were working on your Raise to Rise program, is you discovered that there's actually 7 steps that somebody really starts thinking, okay, this is not good. So can you go through those quickly? Because we've got about 15 minutes left, but
Okay.
what are the 7 things that kind of, if you're feeling these, it's like, okay, maybe there is an issue.
Yes, yes. Well, so this is I call it the 7 stage quitting process,
Hmm.
and it's really intended to be a conscious quitting process.
Hmm.
So we're not just that knee-jerk thing of like, oh, I'm just
Yeah, I
so
can't
mad
take
about
this anymore. Quit.
exactly, just pull it. I've
Hmm.
done that.
Hmm.
Not so great for the nervous system. I've also, done the quitting in a
Hmm.
more measured way and have done
Hmm.
the pull the plug very quickly. That
Hmm.
was actually the last job after that sexual harassment
Hmm.
situation. I quit the next day
Yep.
with no notice. And
Hmm.
so good girl Sarah again was like reeling from that. And
No notice. Oh my gosh, it was, I'm done.
I don't want
Hmm.
that. Yep. I did. I walked out the
Hmm.
door because I just knew that my voice and like the whole thing hadn't been
Hmm.
taken seriously and
Right,
wasn't
and was
investigated.
not going to change. I mean, that's the thing.
Exactly.
Hmm.
Exactly. So when we think about whether or not we should quit our job, there are seven
Hmm.
seven stages that we go through. The first is rumbling, and this is that
Hmm.
period of misalignment and fragmentation where
Hmm.
we're starting to realize, okay,
Hmm.
something isn't right here.
Hmm.
The next stage is threshold, and that is where we start to say, okay, I'm going to look at what I'm feeling
Hmm.
in this rumbling stage. Am I experiencing a conflict at work that I'm being asked to face head on? Or like,
Hmm.
really, am I being led in the
Hmm.
direction of pulling the plug? So, for example, it could be that you have a conflict at work with a coworker that is just eating you up,
Hmm.
or you need more flexibility in the job. And
Hmm.
like, this is the kind of thing where, on balance, generally, if this one thing
Hmm.
was fixed, that you would still want to stay, then this comes to
Hmm.
this moment of confronting. We want to
Hmm.
do that, right? Because we're not just making these
Hmm.
knee jerk decisions. And so sometimes we will want to stay, but there will be times, and this was the thing that surprised me the most from interviewing women. There will be times, even when we're really happy, that we
Hmm.
still have a feeling that something is not quite right and we
Hmm.
are meant to do something different. And that's
Right.
exactly what you talked about there,
Hmm.
Deb. It's not like everybody who is quitting their jobs right now is just like totally miserable.
Hmm.
It's that some people are like, I'm going to listen to that
Hmm.
part of me that wants to chase this other dream or whatever
Hmm.
it is. So that's rumbling, threshold. And that third stage is knowing. And we just know that
Right.
it's going
Hmm.
to to be time to walk away, but we've done enough self-inquiry and due diligence on the front end that we feel good about. Like that is what we're really experiencing here. Then we have decision and action as the fourth and fifth steps. And those are distinct stages because decision is that mental commitment. And just because we've made the mental commitment to quit doesn't mean that we actually will.
Right.
Had so many people who reached out to me when I put out a call for stories for Raise to Rise saying, I wanted to talk to women who had quit their jobs. I had nearly an equal number of women reach out to me during that time who were feeling stuck and like knew they needed to quit and wanted to quit. But they just felt
they did the quiet quit.
Exactly. Exactly. Yep. Getting stuck and kind of bouncing around in this purgatory or this limbo of the first four stages. It's a really uncomfortable place to be in, by the way, when you're ignoring that knowing. It just, it gets to your point. Eventually you will have to do something about it. That it won't just disappear. So decision, then action is taking those steps and mapping out your exit plan, your exit strategy, the graceful exit. You're picking the date that you're leaving. You know, you're tying up the loose ends, taking all of that action to separate from your current employer. The sixth step, sixth and seventh, these are much more when we are gleaning learnings from what we have done. So sixth is that after effects stage. And this is very much where things can be good, bad, and ugly. Like you can love the new job that you left the previous job for, and you could love where you landed. Sometimes we don't love where we've landed.
We're like, uh-oh.
And you can start to feel that panic. Oh my God, did I make the wrong decision? What am I going to do? That's where you like really settle into that trust piece of things and start to say, it may feel like I'm falling right now, but I know because I've built the trust and I did that work on the front end to know this was the right decision. I know that I am going to be okay. And it's the same thing we were just talking about. So order and chaos being so intertwined, you will have chaos before you find order. The Journal of Applied Psychology found that after switching jobs, you will have at least a year, or at least the data showed, so not everybody will be the same, but on average, people experienced a decline in vitality, so energy, for a year after switching a job. And then family issues also increase because you're trying to, you know, get your handle on the new job and family and things. So it is a big decision, and knowing that this is just part of the journey. You're not doing anything wrong. You didn't do anything wrong. You're going to get there. That's really important. And then the final piece is assimilation. And that's where I think we have never been taught to necessarily take this sort of time to pause and reflect and look back on where we were coming from, where we're going to, what we learned, what we might want to do differently, like integrating all of those learnings. I believe that the way that we were taught to approach our careers, very much that conventional playbook of the linear career path, climbing the ladder to the fancier titles and the fatter paychecks, like it's missing so much of that self-discovery and that ongoing learning and deepening of our own personal development that comes with any other aspect of life. We haven't been taught how to really do that in our careers in a way that helps us to build a solid foundation and creates a springboard for moving forward.
Right. You know, and those steps really do usually come sequentially in order, but sometimes they might not. Especially in the case of, you know, it might not be your choice to leave your position. You know, oopsie. But
be thrown into after effects immediately then in that regard. But then,
you know, you need to go back through and think, okay, now what? You know, and it's you know, I think so many people really need to sit down and think, what is it that I want? You know, and you've got a great handout on your website called The 5 Surprising Superpowers of Women Who Make Bold Career Moves. And part of that is in figuring out, what is it that I want in life? What is important to me? And so whether you chose to make that leap or, you know, that that decision was made for you, you need to stop and think, without the panic of, oh my God, I have to have a paycheck tomorrow, type of thing. Okay, what is it that I want to do? Maybe this was a blessing in disguise. Or, you know, okay, I want to stay in the same career path. And you know, and that's okay. We want to point that out too, is for many people, what they are is exactly where they are supposed to be, and that's fine also. But yeah, stop and think. Okay. And maybe it's, that's that first little thing. If I, it's, let's go back to first grade, right? What do you want to be when you grow up? And what is that? I tell people I still don't know. But what is it that you want to do? And then how do you build on that? But that really is what it is coming down to is, what is going to make you the happiest? And I think what is so nice about the age we live in now is it's saying to ourselves and to others, this is what will make me happy is okay. It's not, but you just went to 4 years of college and you have this degree, and so you have to stay in that career path. Well, maybe not. And so it's okay for us now to be saying, I'm going to explore these other things.
Completely. Well, Deb, you make a great point that like our careers, I believe they were never meant to be, or think back the sort of the history of human lifespan and working. Like it's all fascinating because lifespan all of a sudden now 120 years past the 1800s, we're living longer than we ever did. So our careers are longer. So that sort of old conventional wisdom, like staying with the one employer till you got the pension and the gold watch, like all of that doesn't even apply anymore. And then when you look at it from the standpoint of even, the Industrial Revolution and the starting to look at how we were all valued on an hourly rate, that really ingrained in a lot of things too, of the shoulds and how you're considered to be valuable in the workforce. And it's like all of that stuff we can cast off. And to your point, it's more acceptable to be able to do that than ever before. And if there are people in your life who are responding in more of that old way, that says far more about their fears and their up their shadow than it says about you and what you're doing, as long as you have done that work and you're coming from that knowing, wiser, calmer, still place. And so I do want to toss out here because you made a really good point. Like when you're in that panic of trying to make a decision and, oh my God, I need the paycheck tomorrow. You're right. That is not the place to make these decisions because when we are dysregulated from a physical perspective. So we're talking our nervous system. When nervous system is in fight or flight mode, we don't have the full capacity of our prefrontal cortex to make good decisions. And again, I'm talking prefrontal cortex mixed with your intuition, because as we talked about before, cognition and intuition go hand in hand beautifully to form the full scope of our intelligence, but you still need that part. So you don't make any of those decisions from that really frantic place.
Right. And a big part of it is, again, getting away from what is expected from us. And okay, we have to be realistic. I mean, there are times where we do things we don't want to do because we do need that paycheck, all of those things. But,
totally.
I was also thinking one of the things that we have to get away from is, the definitions. Like, how do you describe success? I'm going to tell a short little story, and then we have to wrap up. Oh my gosh. Long ago when I went to my 10-year high school reunion, somebody, one of the organizers said, we always give away awards, right? Who came the furthest, all those various things. And she said, I want to give an award for who is most successful. And even back then I went, no. And because I said, how do you define success? Yeah. And to her, it was purely, let's see, let me reach over here. Let me get my, right. It was salary, what was somebody's salary and job title? And I said, no, I said, because the person who is maybe scraping by and has 4 kids, but is the happiest person in the world, maybe they're the most successful. Yeah. And so, we have to define success for ourselves. We cannot let someone else define it for us.
Exactly. Well said.
So, well, oh my gosh, this has been so much fun. And we have to have you on again when your book is published so that we can talk about this. This would be fabulous. But until then, tell people, how do they find you and what are the services that you provide?
Yes, you can find me at Sarah with no H, so just Saraj McElroy.com. And I'm also on LinkedIn and Instagram, Sarah J. McElroy for my handle on both of those. I'd love to connect with anyone. I am currently just working on the book and will be offering a membership later this year. I also do one-off consultations. You can find that on my website too if you just want somebody to help you figure out a block in your career transition or even where to start. I like to do more of these one-off pieces though here, and am working on what I believe will be this really robust, vibrant community called the Women Who Walk Collective, not just for those women who are quitting their jobs, but women who want to walk a truer career path back home to them. That's what this membership will be. And it actually uses the tools from the book that will come out next year. But this is the way that you actually can take those tools, start putting them to action and seeing results in your life now.
Oh my gosh, I love it. I love it. I can't wait to chat with you again. Because this is absolutely fascinating to me, whether it was something that happened 20 years ago or 20 minutes ago. It is something that we have to always be considering, because as we've said, if we're not taking care of ourselves, nobody else is going to. And we can't take care of others if we haven't taken care of ourselves, whether it's, as an employer, employee, mother, sister, wife, whatever, we have to put ourselves first, which is very difficult. But it is something we have to do. But oh my gosh, as I said, this is so much fun and I can't wait to have you on again. But do you have any final thoughts that you want to leave everyone with?
Yeah, I would say just trust yourself in all of this. I deeply believe that even if you were to come and talk to me or join a membership or whatever it is, that you know what's right for you. And sometimes it is a matter of having somebody be a mirror and help you to see where you're headed. But I believe we all have the answers deep within us, even if it's hard to find. So trust yourself and you'll never go wrong. What feels like a failure will often be our greatest lessons and gold. It's amazing when you just lean in and let go.
Oh my gosh, I love it. And I can't wait to chat with you again. We might have to do it before the book comes out. But I am Deb Creer. I've been having so much fun talking with Sara McElroy. And until next time, everyone have a great day.
Tune in for our next program for even more trends, best practices, and techniques for how to make your business a success. The Business Power Hour, hosted by Deb Creer, is proud to be part of the C-Suite Network.